There's this book called the Necronomicon, which has incantations in it that if you read, you will bring about the apocalypse. This was the point where I was quite convinced that tonight, the end of my world was going to happen. I believe in the fact that there is energy, and if you mess with it, something can happen. And I think you can create your own demons, but I think that you can also foolishly invite those into your life. I think that is a dangerous path to go down.
You see this man, Marilyn Manson, 28 years old. His name is an amalgam of Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson, his two great opposites, you see. His band members are named after serial killers. In the United States Senate, they're trying to have him banned. They're so disturbed by him. He calls himself the Antichrist superstar. Marilyn Manson had a very interesting upbringing, very religious upbringing. Went to a Christian school. He got beaten up in the neighborhood for going there. Then he went to a normal school, which he wanted, and then he got hell in the neighborhood for having gone to the Bible school. He describes his childhood as one of isolation and fear.
It's consumer alert. We're talking nasty music, the foulest of four-letter words, violent, sexist lyrics, and singers bragging about their satanic beliefs.
The shock rock group Marilyn Manson has outraged decent folk who accuse them of peddling filth. And whatever the practicing Satanist singers are peddling, they're peddling it here in New Zealand this week.
There are few names in rock and metal more synonymous with controversy than Marilyn Manson. To some, he's an artist, an icon of counterculture. To others, he's a scapegoat, a symbol of everything wrong with a generation that grew up feeling lost. But long before the world knew him as Marilyn Manson, long before the headlines and the stage shows, he was Brian Warner, a lonely teenager growing up in Ohio, already drawn to the darker corners of the world. And one night, he claims something found him there, something he says changed him forever. Warner attended a Christian school up until 1986, when at age 15, he was expelled for behavior deemed too rebellious, too dark, for the school's conservative values. He was transferred to a public school where he quickly became isolated. On his first day, he was punched in the face by a classmate named John, one of the popular kids, who accused him of looking at his girlfriend. Rather than fight back, Brian tried to survive, attempting to befriend John, even offering stolen diet pills from his mother's medicine cabinet in exchange for peace. Oddly enough, the two ended up bonding over their taste in music, both fans of bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. After a few uneasy weeks, John invited Brian to stay over for the weekend while his parents were out of town. That's when everything changed.
He lived in an area in Ohio, Canton, Ohio, that was very still in development. His house had a barn, but it was a gigantic lot of land. It was about the size of a football field.
John's house sat alone on a large plot of land, surrounded by half-developed wilderness. It was the kind of place that made silence feel heavy and isolating. After being there for a few hours, as night began to approach, John turned to Brian. He asked him if he wanted to see something scary. A little reluctant, Brian agreed. He followed John out to the old barn near the edge of the property. But before they entered, John turned to him and said something strange.
You know, he tried to make everything seem very mysterious. I know that that was part of the cool guy jean jacket persona of trying to be the evil sort of kid that was the dangerous guy that everyone's afraid of. We get to the barn. He's just like, let me show you something, but you can't tell my brother. It was like the biggest thing.
Inside the barn, a ladder led to a loft above. As Brian climbed behind John, a foul smell hit him. Then, he saw it.
At the top of it was some sort of really makeshift satanic altar. There were dead pigeons, dead rabbits, and it's one thing to, like, you're a kid and you know, step on a frog or you shoot a bird with a pellet gun. But this was like animals cut open and their rotting carcasses hanging and blood everywhere. I'm already scared, and that's when he broke out this book called the Necronomicon.
This is where things get questionable. The Necronomicon is not a real book in the traditional sense. It was created by author H.P. Lovecraft as part of his fictional mythos. The version most people know comes from The Evil Dead, where it's depicted as a book of the dead used to summon demons. So what Brian held that night was likely just a prop, or a fan-made version sold in occult shops and novelty stores. But here's the thing, whether the book is real or not, the intent behind using it can still be dangerous. Many believe that when you seek something out in the dark, it often finds you first. Standing in the dark barn near the altar, John told Brian to read from the book. But before anything else happened, the barn was suddenly lit up by headlights. John's older brother had returned home. Panicked, they ran out of the back of the barn, book in hand, into the woods behind the property, looking for another place to read the book. The teens followed a narrow path through the woods until they reached a clearing, and in that clearing stood the remnants of an old house. Almost nothing left but its foundation and a cellar door. After a bit of hesitation, they approached the cellar and made their way inside.
So I went down these really rotted stairs, and, you know, there's dripping sounds, handprints on the walls. I could hear whispering and talking, and at first I thought it was my friend talking to me. He was scared, and I don't know if he was trying to work me up. And I'm standing with the lighter, shaking, and it's of course burning my thumb, and I'm trying to read through the pages, and that just sounds like the worst thing you could possibly do at that point. Fresh out of Christian school, I had read the Bible enough to know that this isn't good. And then in the middle of it, we both got really scared because we stopped. I could hear talking, and it was very scary. There was people talking, whispering that I heard. It was something along the lines of, "Do you believe in fate?" I dropped the book, the lighter, and we ran in fear. There's no explanation for it other than that there was something supernatural involved. Something that really had a presence of evil.
They didn't stop running until they reached the safety of the house. Neither said much as they lay perplexed in John's room. Eventually, they drifted off to sleep. But the next morning, with sunlight offering a false sense of security, Brian decided he wanted to go back, to retrieve the book, perhaps to prove to himself that what happened was real, but also to attempt to fix what they had done.
We had clearly gone messing with things that we shouldn't have messed with. I mean, there's just things that you shouldn't bother with unless you're prepared to, face the consequences. The next day, I said, let's go find that book and let's get it back, because I think that we have unleashed something terrible. So during the daytime, we went back through the whole trek, and none of it seemed scary during the daytime. We get back to where the woods were, and we follow the path, and there's a clearing, where we saw the structure of the house and the cellar. And there was nothing there. It just didn't exist. It was gone. And no one has an explanation for it. The fact that it disappeared, like it was some sort of evil oasis in the middle of the night, I think was directly related to our behavior. And that was the most supernatural, strange thing that I've ever in my life experienced.
So is it possible they took a wrong turn, got disoriented in the night? The woods can play tricks on the mind, especially with high levels of fear and adrenaline late at night. But the strange part is how easily they found the cellar the first time, in the dark and in a panic. But even with daylight to guide them, it was like this evil place in the woods never existed at all. But even more disturbing is what Manson said afterward, something unsettling about the outcome of that night, and how it may still affect his life to this day.
I myself have underestimated the power of the occult to this day. I think that I've turned into a worse monster than anything that I could have dreamed of, because that became my life, and I don't think that there's any other explanation for it.